Tonight on The ReidOut.
Our job is to legislate, not to continue to investigate something in the back when you cannot find any reason to impeach this president.
I am directing our House committee to open a formal impeachment inquiry into President Joe Biden.
She cannot change the laws of this Congress. She cannot unilaterally decide we're in an impeachment inquiry.
I do not make this decision lightly.
That was Kevin McCarthy in 2019 explaining how an impeachment cannot be started unilaterally, which is precisely what he just did as Republicans try to gaslight Americans into thinking Joe Biden is just like Donald Trump. Also tonight, Fulton County DA Fani Willis makes her case for why Donald Trump and his 18 criminal co-defendants should be tried together, while Trump tries to sever his case and delay his trial. Plus, in football, they use a lot of war terminology like blitzing the quarterback and throwing the bomb. So Coach Tommy Tuberville must be confused, thinking he knows a thing or two about war. But he never served and is now single-handedly causing a crisis within the U.S. military. But we begin tonight with a line that every American should memorize. It was first uttered by Donald Trump during the lead-up to January 6th. And it goes like this. Just say there is corruption and leave the rest to me and the Republican congressman. And that, as it turns out, is what House Speaker Kevin McCarthy and his caucus of MAGA misfit toys have been trying to do with President Biden. Even though Trump's own Department of Justice couldn't find any corruption, Senators Ron Johnson and Chuck Grassley led investigative committees that found nothing and cleared Joe Biden. And so did the chairman of the House Oversight Committee, James Comer. Yep, you heard that right. But like I said, facts be damned. Just say there's corruption and leave the rest to me and the Republican congressman. And to that point, this was Kevin McCarthy this morning.
So you have all these questions, and to be able to get the answers to those questions, you're going to have to subpoena certain documents.
Now, we all know that Mr. McCarthy isn't the whiz. The woman behind the curtain pulling the strings is named Marjorie Taylor Greene, the Georgia congresswoman who has demanded Biden's impeachment for fill in the blanks, whatever, since before he even took office. And Trump's Mike Kevin has now given her what she and the twice impeached, 4 times indicted former president both demanded. According to the New York Times, Greene and the civilly liable for sexual abuse former president seemingly knew this was coming and discussed over fish and Diet Coke the House plan to impeach President Biden. Apparently, she told the Times that she told Trump she wants to make impeachment long and excruciatingly painful for Joe Biden. Because that's the point, isn't it? To punish Biden for Trump's dual impeachments, to even the score, and make Trump look less bad for having tried to extort Ukraine and then trying to overturn an election with an armed coup. To say nothing of the 4 indictments. Did I mention the 4 indictments? Yes, I think I mentioned the 4 indictments. Then there is serial liar and fraudster Congressman George Santos, or is it Anthony DeValder Santos or Kitara Rivas? The New York Times, the New York congressman, who is currently indicted by the Department of Justice for fraud, money laundering, theft of public funds, and false statements, went on CNN to talk about Biden.
Joe Biden has a treasure trove, starting with his son, Hunter Biden, cocaine in the White House, laptops from hell, all these things, and none of this is spoken about on your network.
Okay, this guy is Republicans' character witness for their impeachment inquiry, really? Then there's Judiciary Committee Chairman Jim Jordan. He has spent years barking sound bites for Fox about accountability and justice. The same Jim Jordan who has been accused by multiple former Ohio State University wrestlers of ignoring credible claims of sexual abuse by the team's physician. He denies the allegations, of course. Then there is Mr. Impeachment himself, Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer. And we all know his face because he's been all over Fox and CNN, utterly failing to support his corruption claims. What you probably didn't know is that this guy has his own past questionable behavior. In a recent profile, the New York Times reported that during a failed 2015 campaign, he was accused by a former girlfriend of hitting her and taking her to a clinic for an abortion, an account that was supported by her roommate at the time. He denied it. It doesn't stop there. In an effort to stop the reporting on those allegations, Comer allegedly distributed unlawfully obtained emails between a reporter and a source, a fact he admitted to the New York Times. Now, I'm not sure how legal that is, but maybe he would like to take up an impeachment inquiry to find more facts. Folks, this is the Delta Force of justice in the House of Representatives. Most of them are millionaires, some real and some made up. And while these members chase Trump down the QAnon rabbit hole, they are turning their backs on years of actual corruption involving a president and a family member whose name is not Hunter Biden.
I rise today to urge House Republicans to investigate one of the modern American scandals and political cons. Now, why did the Saudi government give Jared Kushner $2 billion just months after he left the Trump White House? Kushner, who oversaw Middle East policy for his father-in-law, has enriched himself and his family in what is clearly an enormous grift and likely serious conflict of interest crimes. The American people deserve answers, and I urge my colleagues across the aisle to answer all our calls and subpoena Jared Kushner's company once and for all.
So here's the thing. Comer abandoned an investigation opened by Democrats into Trump improperly profiting off the presidency. He also killed a separate inquiry into the business dealings of Jared Kushner with the Saudis, because they don't care about actual corruption. They only care about hurting Joe Biden politically ahead of the next election, because as Simon Rosenberg pointed out on this program last night, they clearly don't think that they can beat him without making him as dirty as Trump. But here's the problem. They're not starting from scratch with some unknown politician. They're starting with Joe Biden. You know, Joey from Scranton who likes ice cream, Corvettes, Ray-Bans, and his family. Biden has been around for decades. His brand ain't new. And that's precisely why Barack Obama picked him as his vice president. He's the 29-year-old who was sworn in as a senator in a hospital next to his two young sons after their mother and sister were killed in a tragic car accident, a major, major news story at the time. He's the guy who chaired the Senate Judiciary Committee confirmation hearing of Clarence Thomas. That's in the 90s, by the way. He's the guy who pressured Republicans back in 1993 to help pass an assault weapons ban. He's the guy who, back in 2007, destroyed Rudy Giuliani's presidential ambitions by saying, quote, "There's only three things Rudy mentions in a sentence, a noun, a verb, and 9/11. He's the guy who helped President Obama pass one of the most important pieces of health care legislation in American history, and then whispered goofily into an open microphone, "This is a BFD," but he didn't use the initials. Joe Biden has lived practically his entire adult life in the public eye. This impeachment inquiry is Republicans trying to rewrite history because they don't like the current reality. They're trying to gaslight you into believing a guy who was once mocked for being one of the poorest guys in the Senate hatched some sort of nefarious decades-long campaign to fatten the Biden family coffers without a single journalist noticing. I mean, how could we have missed it? What they are trying to do with a not too small amount of help from Fox and some members of the mainstream media, too, who ran this same playbook with Hillary Clinton and her emails, is to get you to somehow forget who Joe Biden is and replace that reality in your minds with the MAGA fan fiction that he is a master criminal, just like Donald Trump, minus the gold toilet. Joining me now is Democratic Congressman Robert Garcia of California, a member of the House Oversight Committee, and Kurt Bardella, Democratic strategist and former House Oversight Committee spokesman back when he was a Republican. I want to go to the congressman first, because I don't know how old you are. I'm not going to presume, but I know you're one of the younger members of the House. And so I would wager to say Joe Biden has been a public figure for your entire life. And yet we're supposed to believe that this same guy has been running an apparent criminal enterprise for decades. Has anyone on the other side of the aisle admitted to you that they know that that is pure BS and that they're just doing this to try to beat him in the next election?
Yes, absolutely. We have, as a freshman member, there are freshman Republicans who are out there who know this whole thing is BS and it's all politics. I mean, the truth is that this is completely about trying to elect Donald Trump as president. And the reason that folks like Marjorie Taylor Greene and George Santos are out front is because Kevin McCarthy has completely lost control of his entire caucus. And so now what we have is essentially a political campaign by Donald Trump being waged through the most MAGA extremists in the House to try to damage President Biden, who, by the way, has done absolutely nothing wrong. We know that there is zero evidence zero evidence of the president doing actually anything illegal or close to improper here as in his administration. And so this attack that's currently happening is shameful. It's quite frankly to most of us is a complete joke. We, of course, stand behind President Biden, and everything, Joy, you said in your opener is absolutely correct. This is now a Republican Party that is run by Donald Trump and Marjorie Taylor Greene.